You're listening to the official podcast of Bloodstock Open Air Festival. Bloodstock Radio.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to Bloodstock Radio, podcast number 62. And again, it's a little bit different, as a few weeks ago I recorded an interview with the director of the festival branch of the Samaritans, which I was already planning to air on this week's podcast. Then, towards the end of last week, H from Acid Rain also sent me a follow-up piece regarding his own mental health, and I began to wonder if we were maybe focusing too much on that side of things, when essentially this is supposed to be a podcast about a music festival. But then last Saturday, H and I got into a conversation on Facebook Messenger about why we thought it was not only acceptable but essential to talk about these things. And I thought it would be a good idea to take that conversation to a phone call that we could broadcast alongside the Samaritans interview this week. So we did that. And then, of course, the devastating news came through on Monday about the tragic loss of the Prodigy's Keith Flint, aged just 49, illustrating perfectly why we have to talk about these things. So tonight, with absolutely no apologies, we have a mental health special on Bloodstock Radio, starting off with that chat that I had with H on Saturday.
Bloodstock Radio.
Okay, everybody, this is a joint feature going out on Bloodstock Radio and the Talking Bollocks podcast. So I am Squatter from Bloodstock Radio, and this is...
Hi, I'm Howard H. Smith from Acid Rain.
And he does the Talking Bollocks podcast. So
you really set that up for me perfectly, didn't you? And I just completely dismissed the fact that I've got a podcast. Yeah. Hi, I'm Howard Smith from Acid Rain, and also the Talking Bollocks podcast. And I'm also a stand-up comedian.
Yes, that's better. That worked better. So basically, you and I were talking on Facebook Messenger earlier on, and I just thought, you know what, we should actually have this conversation on a podcast that we can put out there, because it's basically we've been chatting about mental health and about the sort of bits and bobs that we've been putting out there, and almost the sort of responsibility that we've got, because we've both got a bit of a platform to actually speak about things, and I don't want to just put music stuff out there. I want to basically make it more about people and about life and about things that we all suffer with. So I just thought this would be a better platform for us to talk about it, rather than just chatting in Facebook Messenger.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, I think if you're lucky enough to have a platform, then you've got to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started off on Bloodstock Radio doing just music interviews, and then I wanted to sort of spread it out a little bit more. So I spread it out more into the sort of music industry, and I was chatting to you at the time. I think possibly the first interview I ever put on Bloodstock Radio was with you, but obviously it was about Acid Rain and it was about music. And then we had a chat, and because I knew you did your podcast, and I invited you to maybe do something for Bloodstock Radio, and what you actually sent in was not what I was expecting at all, and it was about your struggles with mental health.
Yeah, funnily enough, I remember doing that interview with you. It was The Man Who Became Himself, which is autobiographical from my point of view on a period of depression that I fought my way out of. And, well, I say fought my way out of. I reached out for help, got the help that I needed, and was able to, with that help, fight my way out of it. Yeah. And I remember speaking to you at the time, and you were saying, it's all about sort of seize the day, isn't it? The lyrics. And I was very much kind of like, if that's how you interpret it, then that's absolutely fine. And then I remember having a conversation with you probably about a year later, and you were like, yeah, I get what that song's about now.
Yeah, I think it was before the lyric video, basically. Once I saw the lyric video, I was like, right, yeah, okay, now I get it a little bit more. That helped.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And there are key phrases, funnily enough, in the lyrics to that song that people will recognise. For instance, I haven't disclosed this before, but this seems an appropriate place to do so. There's a lyrical phrase in the song which says, "Life traps are there just waiting for you." And life traps, there are 12 life traps, and identifying them is part of CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, which is what helped me out. And everybody has them. It's just how many have you got? And the more you have, the more likely you are to have mental health struggles. And I just kind of wanted to drop like that in as a clue kind of thing for people reading it, for people who've been through CBT, who might read that and go, right, okay. And just to strike a chord with people to say, look, you know, this is, anybody can suffer from this at any time. You know, I think I hit my rock bottom probably about 3 or 4 years after losing my father. It was just, it got to a stage where the bad days were outweighing the good, and even the good days weren't that good. They just weren't bad days.
Yeah.
And it was pretty, I had to be ruthlessly honest with myself. I mean, by the time I finished a 15-week course of CBT, I realised who I was, as opposed to 15 weeks previous, thinking that I knew who I was. And during that 15 weeks, I had to admit that I think I'd developed a little bit of a kind of superhero complex almost, like I was my own superhero, and, you know, that doesn't apply to me, and, you know, and I just created this version of myself that I projected into the world that just wasn't me. I wasn't being honest with myself or anybody else. And, you know, it forced me to really re-examine how I was conducting my life and the effect it was having on me. And then once you've dealt with all that, you then realise the effect it's having on everybody else. And the amount of people that know me who have said to me the change that they have noticed in me since that period in my life, that it's actually quite major, and possibly more than I'd even realised myself. And that, of course, the knock-on effect of that is like, wow, you know, when you address these problems, you're not only addressing them on behalf of yourself, but the people around you, the people that live with you, the people that work with you, your friends, they're all dealing with the problems that you aren't dealing with.
Yeah.
So when you do deal with them, they benefit as well as you. You know, it really is such a it sounds cheesy, but it's such a healing process for everybody.
Yeah. When you look at things externally and when you don't know people, you know, that well, obviously, you know, you would look at you. If anyone that ever seen you on stage would just think, oh, he's the happiest bloke in the world. Look at how alive he is on stage. He's the lead singer of a band. They're headlining the Sophie stage at Bloodstock in front of 5,000 people, and that's where you get the kind of, well, what's he got to be depressed about? What would he be down about? Why would he be struggling? Look at, he's got everything. He's got this. You look at Chris Cornell. You look at Chester Bennington. People are like, they don't understand it. They're just like, well, I don't get it, and they don't understand that it's an illness. It's not about being happy. It's not about whether you're happy or sad. There's actual lots more going on than that, isn't there?
Well, also, I think that the mistake people make is that they think that when somebody commits suicide, they decided to do it 5 minutes previously. That's not the case. It's very rare that somebody commits suicide successfully at the first attempt.
Yes.
It's the end of a road that is very, very long. To use an example that people might be able to identify with, Robin Williams committed suicide, but he had attempted it many, many times. You know, I mean, I never got that far, but I may well have done if I hadn't, you know, reached out for help.
Yeah.
And I remember it was, funny enough, it was my GP. I'd been in, and I said I kept getting heart palpitations, and I had like strange feelings here and this and that. And so over the course of about 6 months, I went into hospital for various tests. I had ECGs and all sorts. And I went to see him, and he got, right, he said, I've got the test results back, and these are fine as well. And I was like, oh, right, okay, that's great news. And he said, look, Howard, it's very rare that I see you, but over the last sort of 6-7 months, I've seen quite a lot of you. And we've run a lot of tests, and they've all come back fine. Are you all right? And I just said, no, I'm not. I'm really, really not. In fact, I'm probably lower than I've ever been, or I can ever remember being.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. And he passed me on to a counsellor that he knew who specialised, funnily enough, in working with performers. And she was great, but again, what I found myself in was a particular area of psychotherapy, which is the talking cure, which is you sit and you talk.
Yeah.
The problem I had was I kept doing that, and it would act as a release valve. So the pressure would build, I would go to counselling, feel better, go, okay, I'm better now, see you later, in 6 months be back at square one. And I just thought, look, I need to try and get I'm just frustrated by all of this. Long story short, I went back to him. He recommended me to the NHS because I was going private before and I couldn't afford it anymore. They did a telephone interview with me, and then they sent me to CBT, and CBT was it was the thing for me. But funnily enough, what will become apparent in a future special that I've recorded for you and started this whole conversation, I took to CBT like a duck to water, and that really was not a warning, but was is quite significant when I look back on it now, because within the last fortnight I've received a diagnosis of suffering from ADHD. I say suffering from. I genuinely don't feel like I suffer, inverted commas, from it, but it is a thing, and it does cause problems in my life. And one of the ways of treating it is with CBT, with a tweak in it specifically for sufferers of ADHD. So that all makes even more sense now, looking back on it.
Yeah. We've got that feature coming up probably next week on the show. The main reason what I'm trying to do at the moment, I've started working with Samaritans. So you mentioned about the suicide things side of things, and obviously that's a big aspect of the Samaritan sort of stuff as well. So later in this show, we've got an interview with the Samaritans. Obviously Samaritans are at Bloodstock, so that's where we sort of got the in. So they have a tent in Midgard at Bloodstock. But we've got a chat with the festival director coming up later in the show. But from my point of view, I'm fortunate enough to have never suffered with mental health problems, but that almost makes me feel obliged to sort of help out and reach out to people that have. And I've found myself doing that with more and more musicians, with getting to know more and more bands. Literally, just before talking to you on the phone here now, about an hour ago, I've checked in with about a member of a very well-known band who is in a terrible state at the moment, but not many people know about it because they've got this stigma around it, they've got that attachment to it, and I'm literally checking in with people all the time, which is why I sort of wanted to do a little bit more and try and reach out to people that have taken that first step, that have phoned the Samaritans because they're struggling and that. And that thing that you said to me about suicide being a long journey, that's very, very, I'm very conscious of that when I'm on the phone to people and that with the Samaritans, because you always sort of think, I can only ring the Samaritans if I'm literally standing at the cliff edge. But the way that I always look at it is that there's a big hill before that, and they've started at the top of the hill and they've walked all the way down to that cliff edge. And as soon as people start talking on the phone, and I'm trying to work out whereabouts they are, how far down that, how close to the cliff edge are they, to try and work out where they are. And that's what Samaritans are. You don't need to be at the cliff edge. You can be all the way back there and just having a bad day and just starting to struggle with things.
Well, I mean, first up, I think it's fantastic what you're doing. I really do. I mean, I've thought about doing something similar, but if I'm really, really honest, I don't think I don't think I can cope with other people's problems. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm always there for my friends and things like that. But I just don't think I could cope with it. I think I would take it home, and I think it would probably give me anxiety. Yeah. About people that I've spoken to as well.
It's not for everybody, but as we'll find out in this feature later on, there's the training and the preparation for it and everything is quite extensive. So it's I mean, there are people that go through the training and then just think, well, actually I don't think I can do it. There are people that you have a mentored period as well, and sometimes when they actually start taking the live calls, they realise, well, actually, no, I can't actually do this. But there are, obviously it's for different type of people, and that's the reason I've got the feature on, because it's appealing to people that might want to do it, that might actually want to become a Samaritan, and also people that don't know what Samaritans are about and whether they can ring in if they're struggling.
Exactly, and again, I think it's brilliant what you're doing, and I guess that's why I'm being so vocal about mental health and about ADHD, which wasn't even recognised by the medical community until 10 years ago, that it was actually a thing in adults as well. And I just feel it's my kind of responsibility. I genuinely don't feel like I have a choice. I feel compelled to talk about this stuff and to communicate about this stuff, and almost, especially because of something you said earlier about the image of Acid Rain is one of a bunch of guys who are just like you and are having a brilliant time doing what they're doing. I'm also a stand-up comedian as well, And I don't want to fall into the whole cliche of, tears of a clown and all of that. But yes, from the outside, I may well be the kind of person that you would think I would be the last kind of person to have suffered from these kind of things. And I guess that is even more of an inspiration to me to get across to people that these things can affect anyone, and you don't have to have the history of it. It can appear out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And there can be any kind of triggers that can set things off. And sometimes, there isn't even a trigger. Sometimes it is something that's just been hiding under the waterline for years and it just appears. Yeah. And it is just so important to communicate it to people that, funnily enough, when I got my diagnosis, and I received this all sorts of sort of care pack, and there's 15 things that you can do. And one of the top 5 is tell people. Obviously, I don't mean you have to stop people in the street, but is tell people you work with, tell your family, tell your friends, tell people who are close to you. One of the first bits of advice is talk about it.
Yeah. Talk
to people. Open up, and just can't emphasize enough how important talking is.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and there's still that sort of stigma with it, and I'd say I hear it with the Samaritans, and you hear it with people anyway. They don't really feel that because it's not a visible illness, but it's and also people have problems with the medication. We don't want to take medication for it. If you have a cold, if you have a cough, if you've broken your leg, then you don't refuse medication for that. Why would you and you wouldn't not talk to someone about that. You wouldn't say, someone broken my leg, really embarrassed, I've broken my leg. You don't get embarrassed about that. You've broken your leg, you've got something wrong with you. That it should be at that level that you can just talk about it, but we're not there yet. So things like this, things like what you're doing, things like what I'm doing, hopefully will encourage those conversations more, and we'll get that stigma rid of it, because it's ridiculous that stigma's there.
Absolutely. Funnily enough, earlier today, and I know you've seen it, I have a thing that I do post once in a while, and the band has posted it as well, and tweeted out, and it's all over Instagram, which is a particular image which talks about anxiety and panic attacks and depression, and just normalising it for people, and just saying that that it's not a weakness, that people who have been dealing with this have been fighting a fight for many, many years. And it's a sign of strength to reach out and talk about it and discuss it and get help. And it's a sign of strength, and it's also it's very healthy, and it's the only way to go. You have to do it,
Absolutely. Well, that's what I want to do, and that's why I'm sort of putting this out there, because I don't want people sort of tuning into the podcast every week and say, oh God, it's another thing on mental health. Oh, it's another, and they're just interested in the music side of things. These things, I'm trying to look for things where there is a crossover. Obviously, the fact that you're a musician, obviously the fact that I know of a lot of musicians that are struggling with it and stuff like that. But it's everybody. It's literally, if people are listening to it, then I make no apologies for including this in what is essentially a festival podcast, but it affects all of us. So that's really why I wanted us to have this little chat, to sort of just say, if anyone's tuning in and thinking, oh God, they're going on about mental health again, well, that's fine. You don't have to listen, but I'm not going to stop doing it, basically.
And especially within creative industries, it's even more rife, because ultimately you've got to have a screw loose if you want to get on stage and put yourself up there to be shot at. Let's face it. Yeah. Reaching out, getting help, it's so important. But one thing which is a little bit of a mantra of mine, is introspection. Look inside yourself to fix yourself. So many people I see, they move from job to job, and it's, oh, why have you moved? Oh, there was this person, and oh, there was that person there, and then, oh, and this happened to me, and that, and often those kind of people, and we all know them, where everything seems to happen to them.
Yeah.
That is not the case. What's the one thing that links that person with all those incidents? It's them. And I speak as somebody who's been that person.
Yeah.
And at some point in your life, you have to go, do you know what? Maybe, leaving that job because of that person, or I didn't go with that, or I didn't like that, or that happened to me, and it's like, well, actually, just stop for a minute and ask yourself, why? Why are you always in this situation? Is there anything you're doing that is leading to these consequences?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that every time that there is. Yes, some people are genuinely unlucky. Yeah, I get that. But it's so easy in any given situation to throw the blame outwards. And my first port of call is always, what role did I play in this? What could I have done better? What part of this am I responsible for? You know, it's so important.
Physician, heal thyself, as they say.
Absolutely. Great quote. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, mate. Well, thanks for having that chat. As I say, we'll have the Samaritans one on later on in the show, and then we'll have your ADHD one on next week, and I'm sure we'll have future chats in the future as well. We were just to satisfy the music people. How's the new album going?
It's sounding monstrous. We are 5 songs down now, 5 songs mixed. We have a label, we have an offer, and it's good times. I'm still hopeful the album's going to be out this year. Really, really want it to be out this year. I mean, it's the music business, so you can never tell, but very, very hopeful that we're going to have it out this year. And we'll be back with a vengeance once it's out. I mean, we had a very quiet 2018, and as I speak now, we have 1 show booked for 2019. But that isn't to say that there won't be a tour by the end of 2019. Once we've got a timeline for the album, we can then, let our booker loose who's itching to book a tour, and we can crack on and get everything sorted. Just can't wait to get it out there because we really, really want people to hear these songs, and we want to start playing them live.
Sounds good to me, mate. I will be there, as you know.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be stalking us as always. Can't wait, mate. Can't wait.
Cheers for talking to us, H, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Great. Cheers, man.
Bloodstock Radio.
So there we have it. The original idea was for me to have a quick chat with H, but as I'm sure you realise, there's no such thing as that with him. And that is in fact a fairly cut down version of the full chat that we had. And he'll be featuring the full version, uncut and unedited, on his own podcast, as we mentioned during our chat there. So, H's feature about ADHD will be on next week's podcast, where we'll also focus on the 7 bands that were announced for Bloodstock 2019 this week. But we're going to continue with our mental health focus with that Samaritans interview, which is coming up straight after a brief Metal to the Masses update.
Metal to the Masses update.
Hello again from Paul H from Musipedia of Metal, the rock and metal blog that covers the South Wales Bloodstock Metal to the Masses qualifying heats. We're now in full flow with our qualifying heats, and Heat 3 proved to be as lively as the previous 2 rounds. Another fantastic turnout on St David's Day at Fuel in Cardiff saw 4 bands fight for the right to get to the semi-final on another night of high-quality metal. In the end, the vote was separated by a mere 3 votes, and it was a really tough decision for the judges to decide whose performance edged it on the night. Coming out on top was the sleazy punk-tinged rock of Swansea band Grim, whose energetic opening slot impressed. Runners-up and earning the wildcard slot was Beyond Sorrow, while commiserations go to Excursia, who were pipped by the narrowest of margins, and solo project Sounds of Insane Music, who gave a really good account of himself. Our next heat is coming hard and fast on Friday the 8th of March, with a 5-band heat promising to be another special evening. We've got the Crazy Anal Floss's Boss, Fallen Temples, Led by Lies, Rapture's End, and finalists for the past 2 years, Incursion playing. It promises to be another great evening, showcasing more of the cream of the South Wales scene, so come on down if you can. You can find more details, including preview interviews with the band, at our Facebook page by searching Bloodstock Metal to the Masses South Wales Heat 4, and also at the Musipedia of Metal site, musipediaofmetal.blogspot.com. I'm Paul H, and I'll be back next week with results and further news about all things Metal to the Masses South Wales.
Hello, this is Steve reporting from Bloodstock Metal to the Masses in Somerset, where it's back for its 2nd year at the Cobblestones in Bridgewater. Heats start on Monday the 11th of March and then take place every Monday for a few weeks. Heat 1 starts at 7 o'clock and features The Pretty Fragile, Duskwood and More Human Than Human. Last year's winners Kinesis absolutely smashed it on the New Blood stage, and I can't wait to find out who's following them this year. Get down the Cobblestones and find out with me.
Hi, Jake from Sheffield Metal to the Masters here. After another stonking heat, we must say congratulations to Shonin and Nuri, who are going through to our semi-finals. Again, this week as always, Thursdays, Mulberry, £5. We'll see you there.
Hi guys, Tom from Resin Events here with your Leicester Metal to the Masses update. We had our first heat last Sunday, and after 4 fantastic performances, it was decided that By Design and 28 Double would progress through to the quarter-finals. Commiserations to the Night I Burned and New Age Grace, but don't forget, it's not over yet, because you may be put through as a wild card. We would also like to thank all the people that attended the event to support the bands and Metal to the Masses. It was especially nice to see bands that are entered in this year's competition attending the event and supporting the other bands. The next round will take place on the 31st of March at Duffy's Bar, with Dawn of Anubis, One Still Standing, Metal Artois, and 10 Days Later. Doors are at 6:15, the entry fee is £5. See you there.
Good evening, Bloodstock Radio. This is your man Dave checking in from Metal to the Masses Hitchin, and we are here with a roundup of all things Metal to the Masses Heat 4 right here at Club 85. We had a fantastic heat again, really enjoyed ourselves, crowd were fantastic, and we give our massive congratulations to the Last Skylit Night and Black Atlas, who will proceed to the next round. Massive commiserations to Own Your Life and Charlie Virus, who are both fantastic. Really did enjoy you guys. We will be seeing you again in the future. Next up, we have Heat 5 on Sunday the 10th of March with Descendants of Odin, The Grey, Far From Refuge and Powderhead. Once again, doors open at 7 o'clock with the first man hitting the stage promptly at 7:45. Thank you very much. See you all there. Stay heavy and long live Bloodstock.
This is Chris from the CPR show Hailsham FM telling you that on Sunday night you need to get to the Green Door store in Brighton for Heat 2, the Metal to the Masses. Doors are at 7 o'clock. Headlining band Luna's Call have the unenviable task of choosing a winner to go through to the final. Competing bands are Kenzoku, extreme metal from Brighton, local proggy tech band Court of Io, and post-apocalyptic metalers Terrorborn. Good luck to them all.
The big interview.
Okay, next up on Bloodstock Radio, we're doing something that's not strictly music-based, but there is a strong link to Bloodstock, 'cause we're having a chat to John Bird from the Samaritans. How are you, John?
I'm good, thank you very much.
Can you tell us what your current role is with the Samaritans and how long you've been involved with them?
Yeah, I'm currently director of the festival branch of Samaritans. I'm also in Swansea branch of Samaritans and on the education team there and the prison team there. So we go into the local prison, talk to the prisoners there. We've got some prisoners trained as Samaritans who we call listeners, and they're there 24/7 if people are going through a bad time or just want to have a chat in their cells or on their wings or wherever it happens to be. And we go in every week just to debrief these guys and to find out what's happening. The education team, we go in to talk about the consequences of bullying and all other things that may happen in schools that perhaps make people feel bad. But as I say, the main thing that I'm doing at the moment is being director of festival branch. We typically will attend 20 or so festivals every year, including Bloodstock, as you know. We've been going to Bloodstock for quite a while. We find it's quite a fruitful one for us. We get lots of people who want to have a chat and maybe talk about deeper feelings, and including those feelings which may lead to suicidal thoughts. So we find that it's a good place to talk at Bloodstock. We get people coming up at all hours of the day or night, so we try and run 24/7 if we possibly can, because we find the hours of darkness, people open up a bit more and are willing to talk to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been going to Bloodstock for quite a few years now, and I've always seen you guys in our campsite in Midgard. So I wanted to get you on, just not just because of the festivals link and Bloodstock, but because I've recently joined the Samaritans as a volunteer, and I kind of want to spread the word about it as well, as I think a few people have some misconceptions about the service that we provide. So I thought we could just have a chat about that, really, about what Samaritans is and what it isn't.
Well, Samaritans is generally volunteers from all over the country. There are 201 branches all over the UK, and they predominantly do phone work in their local communities. They also go out and do things like attending doctors' surgeries, prisons I've already mentioned, schools I've already mentioned, to custody suites, and sometimes go out into town centres on Friday and Saturday nights and are just there if people want to talk. So I'm very passionate about the outreach work that we do. I get quite involved in various bits and pieces outside the branch, but inside the branch we do telephone work. Most branches will be open at some points during the week where people can just drop in and have a talk if they want to. The other thing which is taking off a lot more these days, is we have an email service and we have an SMS service, so people can contact us in several different ways. But we started going to festivals 45 years ago. Our first festival was Glastonbury.
Wow.
The main reason for us going to festivals was that we felt that perhaps festival goers at the time, young men, were most likely to take their own lives. So we felt actually going out to see them in their own environment would be a good idea, because they were less likely perhaps to pick up the phone and call us in our centres. So in those days we had a different branding, and we were black and orange, and we were almost like a secret society. But we've opened up a lot more in more recent years, and we have our green branding, which is quite distinctive, and you can see us from a long way off, because generally at a festival we'll have our branded gazebos and our feather banners, and you can talk to us, as I've said, any time of the day or night.
Yeah, I've been surprised, to be honest. So many people that I've mentioned to, A, have never heard of Samaritans, or B, have assumed that it's got some sort of religious connotations. Because I can remember when I first heard of the Samaritans, I was in school, and I went to a Catholic school, and I believe Chad Varro, who started it, was a religious man. So I think
he was, yeah.
That's kind of carried it along. But there is no religion. It's not a cult, or it's nothing to get signed up to or anything, is it?
No, that's correct. And it was started by a clergyman, as you say, Chad Varro, who founded the movement in 1953. I think that's right. Unfortunately, he's passed on now, but he started in a crypt of his church in the City of London. And the idea was that he would be there to talk to people if they wanted to come in. And after a while, he had some volunteers helping produce cups of tea for the people who popped in. And after a while, he decided or found that these people who were making cups of tea were chatting to the people who called, and actually were doing as much good as he was, because he had quite a queue. So he decided that he would form the Samaritan movement. And it was from that it's now, as I say, now 201 branches all over the UK. We have a correspondence branch who just write letters, and that's important for people perhaps who are isolated. Prisoners use the correspondence branch, people in old people's homes, and just people who don't feel comfortable talking on the telephone or talking in person. So that's an important part of what we do. We've got an Irish festival branch who are separate, although do the same sort of thing as we do. We get around to, as I say, about 20 festivals per year, including our big one is a thing called Crisis at Christmas, which is held in London and involves us coordinating Samaritans from all over the country to go out to the various centres that Crisis run over Christmas time. They would have 10 different centres around various bits of London, and some of those, half of them probably, are day centres where people can just drop in, mostly homeless people, just having that space and time to make Christmas cards for each other and to use their computers in various schools and colleges that we take over for Christmas, just to be able to do their CV is a major thing, because when you're homeless, it's very difficult to get organised with all that. So they have people there from all walks of life that I hadn't thought of before I started going. But you have dentists, you have veterinary surgeons, you have doctors, you have chiropodists, you have cobblers, you have seamstresses who mend or alter clothing and so on, and things that you perhaps wouldn't think of. So it's a great part of what we do.
Yeah, and another misconception that I've found, certainly since I've been involved, is that a lot of people think that in order to contact the Samaritans, I have to be suicidal. Whereas that's not the actual case, is it? It can
No,
be
absolutely
anywhere along that journey. That the training that I've received is absolutely superb, and some of the things that I've learned have really sort of opened my eyes as to the sort of vision I've got in my head now. Is that you look at someone standing on the edge of the cliff considering throwing themselves off, but there's actually a big long hill all the way down there, and they could be at any point along that hill. And the idea of the Samaritans is that basically to basically contact us when you're starting to feel bad, or if you just had a bad day. It's not necessarily that you have to be right at the cliff edge. It can be that you're starting to worry about your own mental health and you're just having a bad day, really.
Yes, absolutely, and that's a major part of what we do. That we are there if people are going through any sort of crisis in their life, or just feeling, as you say, having a bad day, and just want to vent to someone who doesn't know them, is not part of whatever their issues are, and can just listen without any boundaries, really. In that, we don't have a time limit on people speaking to us.
Yeah.
We won't cut them off and say, all right, you've had your 30 minutes or your hour or whatever it is. If people want to talk and they're prepared to talk about their feelings, then we'll let them do that. And that can be quite valuable, I think, in the society where everybody's rushing around and haven't got time for each other. We hopefully give them that time.
Yeah, exactly, and I think there's several different things that I think are the key factors to it. There's the non-judgmental bit, as you say. We don't know these people. So you don't know anything about them. All you know is what they're telling us at the time. And we're not judgmental. We're not there to tell people that they've done something wrong or anything like that. It's literally just to talk about things back and forward. And the key thing for me was that it's all about self-determination, and that we don't advise people, we don't tell people what to do. And to be honest, I've been like that as a friend to people for the last few years. I'm very conscious that people should make their own decisions, and that's exactly what we do. It's all about basically bouncing things around with them and just talking around them in order to help them to make their own decisions, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a very good sort of illustration that I quite like, is that it's like your thoughts are sometimes like clothes in a washing machine. They're spinning around and jumbled up and so on. And what Samaritans allows you to do is get those thoughts and put them out on a line and just get them organized and let you explore the options that you do have. And sometimes it's very difficult to see those options unless someone is helping you to get them in some sort of order, and that can be quite a valuable thing, I think. When you initially say, oh, well, we don't give advice, well, that can be regarded as a negative thing, but I really, really believe that it's so positive that actually people should be allowed to make their own decisions about their lives. That's what we do, in a nutshell. And it sounds straightforward, but actually sometimes it can be quite complicated. So it's just because, particularly if you have the feeling that you are the only person who is going through an issue, and actually we can say, well, it's very important for you at this moment, but there may well be a future if we can just explore it together and just see what we can talk about to explore those options with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other key factor of it, of course, is the confidentiality, and that everything that is said is completely confidential within Samaritans. And that's a very freeing thing for people as well, isn't it? Because obviously, if you've got an issue that you may be embarrassed to talk to about your friend, you think that they'll judge you, you think that they might tell someone what you've said, that they might spread that around. It's literally that freedom to be able to be completely honest about what your situation is. And I'm finding already on the phones that sometimes it's really liberating. People will say, I've never told anyone that before, and that's it's only when they've actually spoken out loud and it becomes a thing that they can actually embrace it sometimes and actually think, right, this is the thing. Now, where do I go from here? And then we can explore that with them.
Sure. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think the important thing from the caller's point of view is that they don't feel pressured by us. They can just talk and get those feelings out into the open. And as you say, it's so rewarding when people say, oh, I've never been able to say that before, and you come off a call and you think, oh, I was just glad that I was there at that moment for that person. And that can be a very, very rewarding thing. We don't do it for the reward, obviously, but it's just nice that we're there sometimes for people who are going through all sorts of trauma in their own lives, and we just let them talk, and hopefully when they come off the call they will feel maybe a little bit better. Some of course won't, and the good thing is that because we're not judging, we're not telling them what to do, we hope that if they've talked to us for an hour or so, they'll feel able, whenever they're feeling bad, to call us again. And of course, one thing we do on the phones, as you know, is follow up, so we can actually ring people back if they want to. Sometimes if they're, I don't know, coming up for exams or a court appearance, whatever it happens to be, it's quite a powerful thing to be able to say, well, Samaritans can call you back after that and see how it went.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm finding that a lot. Medical procedures and test results and things like that.
Yeah.
People are really, really grateful that, because I say a lot of people they haven't really got anyone that they can talk to about this thing. So the callbacks are really, really important, and it's the rewarding thing. You mentioned there about we don't do it for the rewarding feeling and stuff like that, but the purpose of putting this out there is that there will be people out there. There've been people that I've spoken to since I've started doing this that would think, oh, I was thinking of doing something like that. I didn't really know what it was all about, and the main reason that I got involved in it was because I was already actually talking to a lot of musicians, and through my role with Bloodstock and from other things, I know lots of bands and lots of people that are in bands, and there does seem to be quite a high percentage of musicians that have mental health issues or depression and struggling and stuff like that. So I've had a list of about, I don't know, 20 or 30 friends that I just check in with every now and again. How you doing? How's things? Some of them are more open about having had mental health issues. Some of them you just sort of spot the signs and just have a chat to them. But it didn't seem that saying I'm always here if you need a chat was enough, because people aren't always going to reach out to you like that. So I used to actively sort of check in with people, but with Samaritans, these people are reaching out to us. So you've actually got that first step. They've reached out and they are asking for someone to talk to, and that for me became a really big thing, and that's one of the main reasons that I ended up getting involved.
Good. Yeah, I mean, it's a slightly different dynamic at festivals because the Samaritan is making the approach, really, in that you're not waiting for a phone to ring. You're out there and in the pouring rain or the blistering sun or whatever it happens to be, and you are just sort of setting out your stall. You're actually saying to people, we are here if you want to talk. And you might start off a conversation with someone just talking about the weather or the bands that they're going to see or whatever, but it's surprising to me how often just that chat, that opening, can turn into quite a heavy call, and that's rewarding in itself as well.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And one of the other reasons was the reason I actually contacted and found out about my local Samaritans was that I saw one of these posts that goes around Facebook and things like that about I think it said 12 men a day in the UK were committing suicide, and I thought to myself, that seems ridiculously high. So I actually looked into it, and that was correct. The ONF, they were the actual figures involved in it, and I thought, right, I'm going to share that with my own sort of slant on it, and I'm going to put up some information about Samaritans and the text and the free phone call and stuff like that. And then I thought to myself, that's actually not enough. I'm actually going to take this further and actually, investigate, maybe getting involved, maybe volunteering. And I have to say, that was probably about 6 months ago now. I'm just coming to the end of my sort of mentored period. And it's been everything that I expected it to be. And it is rewarding to know that you're helping people. But there's lots of different reasons for getting involved, I suppose.
Yes, that's right. And I think it's important that people feel that they're able to join up with Samaritans, and it's not for everybody because sometimes the hours can be a bit strange. As you know, in branches we work overnight sometimes, and we do get up early in the morning and finish late at night. But it's all down to you. Whatever you feel comfortable doing, you can make that choice. And it's the same with festivals. We range from, for example, the big festivals where we're probably requiring people to be there for pretty much a whole week, in that normally with festivals you have to set up before the actual festival goers arrive,
Yeah.
so that there's no vehicle movements and all the rest of it. As you know, Bloodstock is one of the ones where we get there a couple of days in advance, so we can set up our marquee and our own, because we generally camp with the callers or the festival goers, and so that we, if it is bad weather, we're not sort of busting ourselves in from the Premier Inn or whatever. We go through what they're going through, and we've been flooded out many times at various festivals over the years, but it's part of the experience, I think, and it's important that we do feel that sort of community spirit with the actual paying customers, and get involved in the whole thing of festival life, because it can be quite grueling, particularly if you haven't been to a festival for a while, or you haven't camped since the Cubs or whatever. It's quite can be quite a culture shock. And of course, there's the perennial thing of the festival loos, which are always a bit of an education if you're not used to them, but they're getting better. And of course, most places have showers now, which when I first started going to festivals was a bit of a strange luxury, but there we are.
Yeah. Well, we're doing all of that at Bloodstock, so hopefully we've got all of those covered for you, and it's not too uncomfortable for you when you're camping in the yard. Yeah, cool. So the other thing that I wanted to just return to there slightly is this idea of self-determination, because I think that a lot of people in our training group, when we went through the training, were a bit surprised by what they saw as being almost a conflict. So basically, the Samaritans' mission statement is to reduce suicide rates. However, if someone rings in and they are in the act of committing suicide or are thinking about committing suicide, then we don't talk them out of doing that. All we'll do is talk around it, and we will ask them about their options and that. But at the end of the day, it's their choice. And if we have to literally listen to someone committing suicide and they actually go through with that, then that's what we do. We do not talk people out of doing that. And I think a lot of people on our training really sort of struggled with that, because it almost seemed like it was an opposition to our mission statement.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way to address that probably is to turn it on its head and say, well, what would you do? Would you send the police round to their house, or an ambulance against their will? If someone is going through a lot of pain, either physical or mental, and really has decided, after talking to you at great length as well, that is their only option, then I think we have to respect that people are in charge of their own destiny. Otherwise, we're belittling their feelings, I think. And in that regard, it's a very difficult concept. But actually, unless we're going to intervene, and we do give people the option of us perhaps calling an ambulance if they would like us, but if they've decided that they are going to die, we have no way of tracing their telephone numbers, because we've chosen not to. And if they decide that they won't give us the details of where they live, and name and telephone number and all the rest of it, then it is about their own choice. And that can be difficult. And of course, when you come off a call like that as a Samaritan, you will need the fantastic support that your colleagues and your leader will be able to give you. So it's very important that when you've finished a shift, we do it I think we do it better at festivals, because your shift leader will actually be there with you.
Yeah.
So they will be able to talk to you about what's happened and how you're feeling after a call, because the worst thing as a Samaritan that you can do is to have a call going round and round in your head and worrying about that caller, and then trying to talk to the next caller, because you won't be concentrating on the most recent call, and that can be a very poor call for the next caller. So it's important that you, what we call download, which is of course another festival we do, but we download your thoughts and feelings to your leader and to your colleague. What we have to do is keep it confidential within Samaritans. So you can't go home and tell your partner about it, unless they happen to be a Samaritan, of course, because you're breaching the client's confidentiality.
Yeah.
And in marketing speak, one of our USPs or unique selling points is that we are confidential, even, and this is important, even after a person has died.
Yeah.
And that's, again, a really tricky concept, until you get your head around it, if that's the case. And of course, one of the frustrations, I think, of being a Samaritan is that you as a human being, you want to know what happens next. You want to know the full story after they've got off the phone, or they've wandered off into the crowd at a festival, or whatever it happens to be. You, as a human being, you want to know what happens, but because it's confidential, because you're not going to trace the call, because they're not going to, you're not always going to find out anything about what happens next, then that can be quite a frustration. But you have to get over that, and that's part of the training, I think, of being a Samaritan, which, as you said, I think is second to none as far as sort of talking and listening, which is more important to people. And I find it has helped in personal life as well, in that I do find I'm a better listener now.
Absolutely. I'm exactly the same. I always used to find that, if you'd have an uncomfortable silence or that, I'd have to fill it. You'd have to say something and things like that. But I say even only 6 months into my Samaritan's career, I'm already finding myself like that as well. Just to point out to people that might have been listening, might have been a bit daunted by what we're talking about suicide now. It's a concept that we do talk about and we do explore. It's not like a taboo subject or anything like that. We're very open about talking about it and that. But as you've mentioned there, the support network is absolutely superb. There is as much care and attention, I think, given to the Samaritans themselves as there is to the callers. So you've mentioned there about your duty partner that you're on with and being able to talk to them about the call that you've just taken and that. And then you've got the leader at the end of the shift where you phone them. They're usually off site and just chat to them about the calls that you've had. And then the most cathartic things that I find, and certainly in our branch, is literally shredding the notes. We have a shredder there. Any notes that you've made during calls, you shred them at the end of your shift, and that to me sort of symbolises that's done with now, and that really helps me to kind of, right, I've done my bit now, and I can now sort of leave that behind and off you go. Some calls do stay with you for a little while, but you are helped through that. And as I say, the training is superb. So you're not told exactly what to say, but you're told how to listen and how to reflect things back to people and things like that. There's so many things that I just not really thought about before. And it's just I think the training is absolutely superb.
Yeah, I mean, we have a sort of training mantra which we call the listening wheel, which you'll have discovered. Yeah. And it's just helpful, I think, if you first of all asking open questions. You don't ask questions that are yes or no answers, and that is particularly useful when you're trying to open a conversation in the open at a festival. Yeah. Because if you say, nice weather, isn't it? And they say, yep, and they're gone. But if you say, well, how's it going? Just a simple phrase like that, rather than give them the yes or no answer. Just how's it going? You can tell a lot by how people come back after that question. Yeah. And then, oh, mate, all they've got to say is, oh, not so good. And you're into a conversation. And so that's important. And then the important thing to remember, I think, is that, and I'm not demonstrating this at the moment, but the important thing is not to talk too much. Let the caller do the talking, and what you're doing is summarising, reflecting, clarifying what they've said, perhaps giving them short words of encouragement. Yeah. And just as you've said already about silences can be so powerful and so useful in a Samaritan conversation, because you're allowing people to think about what they're going to say next, rather than sort of a constant stream of words where sometimes that can be, it can be awkward, but you don't want to leave it too long for the silences. But on the other hand, they are quite useful to let people collect their thoughts and say what they want to say. And as you've already said, that one of the most rewarding things is that people will say, oh, I've never told anybody that. And in particular, some of the northern biker events we go to, for example, they're very dour to start with, and they say, oh no, I don't talk about my feelings. And then an hour and a quarter later, they say, how did you do that? They say, you've got them talking, and because you're giving them that space, you're not sort of filling every gap, and you're letting them talk about stuff that, as you've said, they may not have been able to tell anybody else, and that's a really powerful thing, I think.
It is indeed, absolutely. So I think that's just about covered everything for us. So what I'll do is, obviously, as I say, this was sort of a two-pronged approach. So if anyone wants to contact the Samaritans and that, then we do have a 24/7 free phone number. That's 116-123. And that is, if I remember rightly from my training, that's not traced and it doesn't appear on any phone bills or anything like that. And if you've got no credit on your mobile, it will still go through and things like that as well. If you're not happy talking on the phone, then we have joe@samaritans.org, which is jo@samaritans.org. You can email that, and we also have our text service as well. So there's lots of different ways of getting in touch with us.
And of course, if you go to festivals, look out for the big green tent and have a chat.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anyone who's heard this and is actually thinking that they might be interested in becoming a volunteer, then as you say, there's branches everywhere. So just have a look around your local area and see if you can find your local branch and get in touch and see if there's anything that you can do. And it doesn't necessarily, there's all sorts of ways to volunteer, isn't it? Even if it's just fundraising, if you can't commit to actually being a listener or anything like that, there's loads of different things that can be done within.
Yeah, if you go to the www.samaritans.org website, there is a route for applying to your local branch, and indeed it's a festival branch if you'd like to do that. So it's quite well organised, so you can actually get an online application if you want to, or if you prefer to phone, obviously that's perfectly acceptable. And as we've said, most branches are open for at least a few hours every week or day, and you will probably check their websites to see when those are, because they do vary. But it's, if you'd rather talk to somebody face to face, then that is always an option.
Perfect. Okay, well, thanks very much for that, John. It's been great talking to you.
Okay, thank you. See you at Bloodstock.
Thanks very much, John.
The big interview.
Yes, a big thank you there to John Bird, the director of the festival branch of the Samaritans, and I hope that was of interest to all of you listening in one way or another. And remember, if you need any more information about the Samaritans, it's www.samaritans.org. Okay, I fear that we're going to run just over our usual hour-long show, but I'm sure that the majority of you won't mind when you find out the reason for that, as we return to the tragic news about Keith Flint that we mentioned right at the top of the show. And I'd like to end this special edition of Bloodstock Radio by firstly mentioning that there is a campaign to get the Prodigy's most famous song to #1 to raise awareness, so please do check that out and support it. And I'd also like to point out that at the time of recording this, there's still no official statement that his death was suicide, just statements from the band and band members, but that's largely irrelevant anyway, as statistically today in the UK, 12 men committed suicide. Yesterday, 12 men committed suicide. And tomorrow, 12 men will commit suicide. And that just has to stop. So please do have a think about those around you. Check out organisations like Metal for Life Northern Ireland and CALM, the campaign against living miserably, and try to look out for each other as best you can. To bring this show to an end, I'd like to read out the last line from the best obituary I've seen in Keith's memory this week. I recommend you all check it out, as it's a brilliant piece of writing on the usually satirical website News Thump. May he rest in peace. A fire, once started, lights those who are warmed by its flames, and it is their duty to bear it forwards, even when the spark has died, because in it we live forever.
By the fans, for the fans. Bloodstock Radio.